Of all the stories from Israel that I've come across over the past heartbreaking 8 weeks, the following story touched me most deeply. It's the story of Ariel Zohar, a 12-year-old boy who lost his entire family in the massacre on October 7th. He had gone out for his regular morning jog that day, and while he was out, Hamas terrorists broke into his home and killed his father Yaniv, his mother Yasmin, and his two sisters Techelet and Keshet. Ariel is the only survivor. His kibbutz, Nachal Oz, was still under mortar fire when the heroic Zaka volunteers offered to pay one more visit to the family's home. They asked Ariel, "Which item would you like us to bring back for you?" Now, if you were Ariel, what would you have chosen? A family heirloom or photo? A garment of your loved one you could hold close? Here's what Ariel responded. "Please bring me my father's tefillin." You see, Ariel was 2 weeks away from turning 13 and becoming bar mitzvah. He had a brand new pair of tefillin, but he asked for his father's. His dear father, who was so excited to see him wrapping tefillin for the first time, would not be with him on that special milestone and occasion. The tefillin that Ariel requested were a gift from his grandfather, who had survived the atrocities of the Holocaust and had rebuilt his family in the Holy Land. Ariel had lost everything, but not his faith. At the time, Nir Oz was still a completely closed military zone. Yet when the Zaka volunteer Chaim Utmezgin heard young Ariel's request, he burst into tears. Chaim said, "Although I was responsible for wrapping more than 700 bodies during this week, it was the first time I cried my eyes out. I was moved that in the eyes of this child whose parents and sisters had been massacred just a few short days ago, when we asked him about his home, he spoke of his father's tefillin, which represents for him the continuity and tradition of this family which suffered so much." Chaim undertook the perilous mission himself. Under fire from Gaza, he gets permission from the army to go in for just a few minutes. He runs in, he takes the desired effect, and he comes out. He describes the joy he felt when he found the tefillin, like the joy the Israeli paratroopers experienced in 1967 when they shouted on the radio, "Temple Mount is in our hands." Chaim says, "When I handed the tefillin to young Ariel that evening, he burst into tears of emotion that they had been found so that he could wear them on the day of his bar mitzvah." The elderly grandfather, who had just lost his son, his daughter-in-law, and granddaughters, stood up and said the following words, and I quote, "My parents were murdered in the concentration camps when I was 14 years old. I resisted and I chose life. Today I have a grandson living in Israel." He turns to Ariel and he says, "You too lost your parents to our enemies when you were 12 years old. You too will resist. You too will rebuild. You too will have grandchildren in Israel." Friends, this heart-wrenching story encapsulates the story and message of the Jewish people. At so many times in our history, we had so many reasons to succumb to despair, to withdraw into self-pity, to adopt a victim identity and narrative, and to give up on giving life and humanity another chance. And yet, like the battle-weary Maccabees, who weren't broken by the scenes of wreckage and sacrilege they encountered upon returning to the temple, our ancestors of old and our modern-day heroes like Ariel Zohar and his grandfather chose faith, chose hope, and chose life. So as we kindle the Hanukkah candles this year, at a time in history when things look bleaker than ever, and moral confusion and darkness seem to abound, let us draw strength and inspiration from the Maccabees, past and present, and like them, let us become the living candles of hope, of light and love, that our world needs more desperately than ever before. Chanukah Sameach.